Hi, this is Dan Z from Coffee with Kenobi, and you are listening to Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age. Aaron, you do it better, buddy. I did my best.
There's been an awakening. Have you felt it?
In 1977, George Lucas formed a legacy.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force.
Inspired by mythology, his saga has become a passion for many.
Feel the Force around you.
His legend has become our story.
It's true. All.
One of resistance,
We are the spark that'll light the fire that'll bring the First Order down.
rebellion,
Rebellion is built on hope.
and redemption.
I'm a Jedi, like my father before.
This is Star Wars Reactions.
Remember, the Force will be with you. Always.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Star Wars Reactions. We're back, and we're going to have some fun celebrating the anniversary. No, not of our show, but of a movie that came out 10 years ago today, the day we're recording this, December 18th, 2025. 10 years ago, December 18th, 2015, the world was changed, and we're going to discuss that impactful movie. Yes, if you haven't figured it out, this is a look back at The Force Awakens. So let's get introductions out of the way. My name is Aaron Harris, and normally you would hear the dulcet tones of David Motters at this point. Unfortunately, Dave and his family are dealing with some things on their end, and our thoughts and prayers go out to them. And David will be missed, but we definitely want to let them know we're thinking about him and we're praying for him through it's just a difficult time. And David will share it when he's ready, but we're going to pick up and keep going in spite of. We got our discussion of The Force Awakens, and I figured, who could we get to replace David Motters? And I figured, well, David's a tall guy, it's going to take two to fill his shoes. So I went globetrotting and brought in two of my good friends, our good friends. All of you've heard them both on the show previously. First off, our good friend from the Rebel Base Card Carabas, the Rebel Base Card Podcast. Greg McLaughlin's with us. Greg, welcome back, my friend.
Thank you. 7 years and my job is not done yet. Trying to make this brand a household name. So I still got a lot of work to do on that. And for a second, I'm like, what holiday movie are we talking? Oh, we're talking about Force Awakens. That's how immediate this is. That's how we're reacting to the reaction. But I am happy to be here, filling up a little bit. Yeah, David is tall, by the way. If you haven't met David in person, the man is tall. So big shoes to fill. But I'll do my best.
Yeah, if you want to see think David and Aaron, just look at the poster for the old movie Twins. with Schwarzenegger and DeVito. That's the comparison for me and David there. Also joining us, filling in the other half of David's shoes from across the pond. He is a good friend. We love him to death. From Wales, Daz Davies is with us. Daz, welcome.
Hello. Well, I've got to be honest. I think all three of us, on each of our shoulders, we're not going to match David. He is a giant among men. We love it. But no, it's great to be with you guys tonight and talking about spoilers, but my favorite movie of all time.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
Shocking. Shocking.
Who knew?
Who knew? So, well, let's jump into this discussion because we got a lot to talk about. 10 years ago, December 18th, 2015, Episode VII, The Force Awakens, was released and launched a new world for basically a new life for Star Wars. Regardless of what you think about the sequel trilogy, this movie rocked the world, hands down. This movie changed everything. And it all was birthed came at the most interesting time, because if you look at the timeline, October 30th, 2012, Disney announces they're buying Lucasfilm, and they announced plans to do this sequel trilogy. Then April of 2014, they announced the casting that Mark and Harrison and Carrie would be coming back, along with new actors, with new cast members: Daisy Ridley, John Boyega, Adam Driver, Isaac. Good Lord.
Oscar Isaac.
Oh, thank you, Oscar Isaac. Arabast. See, we're not even 5 minutes in, and I'm already doubled up. So
I'm marking them down.
You're marking. He's keeping a tally mark.
Down.
He's keeping a tally mark. You really are filling in David's shoes tonight, my friend.
Oh man.
so yes. So April cast was announced. Then, of course, the huge debut, November 6, 2014. The official title was announced, along with the confirmation that filming had wrapped. Then, of course, not 22 days later, the first teaser trailer dropped, and it was over. I mean, the world just launched at that point. And then, of course, we get to the release date in December of 2015, and it changed everything. So let's start go right into the history of it all. What do you remember? What was your feelings? And Daz, I know you said this was your favorite movie, so I'm going to direct this at you first. When this movie was first announced, what were your thoughts? What were your feelings at that point?
Oh, it really captured me. Like, I've for my fandom, it really began with The Force Awakens on like that sort of top tier. You've completely lost all of your senses kind of fandom. It was The Force Awakens, so this was like sort of the lead up, the prelude to me seeing the movie for the first time. And I can just remember that as we got closer and closer, the excitement was building. It was the first real Star Wars movie where, well, yeah, it was the first Disney Star Wars movie, but the first Star Wars movie where social media was a thing. And I think that made the build up to the movie really different. There was so much more conversation, so much more sources of information. And I don't know how many times I saw that teaser trailer and the full-on trailer that came afterwards. I still watch the trailers to this day, and I enjoy them so much. Like it's like a quick shot of just happiness, because it was just such an exciting time. We didn't know what was coming. I remember it was the time where there was just so much theory crafting. Like we were dealing with these little nuggets of information. The thing which always got me was that table read black and white picture that you often see. And you have like the original trilogy cast sprinkled amongst there, and then you have these virtual unknowns, like especially when you think of like John Boyega and Daisy. Yes, they've done little bits and bobs. John, I think he'd done like Attack on the Block, and Oscar Isaac perhaps was slightly better well known, but on the whole, these were complete unknowns, and we were really guessing what might be coming with some of the promotional materials going. And to be honest, like, fast forward, we were really way off of it. But I remember chatting with my friends. There was text back and forth, different people with different theories about who is who, and this person's going to be the granddaughter, twice removed, cousin of, and it was so silly looking back, but it was also a really exciting time. And it just seeing that full-on event that it was at the time with all the promotional stuff, it was, and throw into the fact it was just before Christmas, and I think you throw in sprinkle a little bit of that magic into it as well. It was a good time indeed.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. How about you, Greg? What were you when The Force Awakens and this trilogy was announced? What were your feelings when the announcement, and then of course when that initial trailer came out, which really rocked everybody's world?
Yeah, as I'm kind of firing it out right now because in about 15 minutes, Des, there is a watch party event on Star Wars Card Trader, and if you have your phone handy, the first cards, this is breaking as we're talking. Get in there and get your cards and your cash. So keep it handy. We're going to have a great conversation tonight. And of course, everybody who's listening out there, this will have already happened, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't say, like, hey, there's some free cards out there, man. But what I would say, what's interesting is, this time frame. This falls within my Apple time frame, and so I always kind of look back, kind of first like what the hardware is at the time, and I'm thinking of like, oh my gosh, this is around the time of the original Apple Watch, and all that kind of stuff. But also, I'd been listening to podcasts, for a good 10 years since 2004, even before iTunes officially had podcasts, support in the app. The iPod was out, but if you didn't have if you didn't have a current version of Windows, you couldn't even get iTunes on Windows. So I had to you'd go to websites and download podcasts. But I remember after having listened to podcasts for a long time going, you know what? I bet you there's some Star Wars podcasts, of which I found Coffee with Kenobi to bring that point to a head. I was like, where is he going with this? But I can say that not only was it exciting to see, we'd kind of seen the Disney acquisition, right? I remember, it coming up and getting sold. And like I said, it's still working at Apple at that point and going, wow, we're going to get new movies. And, even then you started seeing like not only the trailer, but I remember like when I started seeing the cards, especially in Target, the Journey to the Force Awakens, and that's what really awoken my card collecting hobby back up. But also, following along and thinking of, a simpler time in Star Wars podcast. It was just the dulcet tones of, Dan and Corey, and then, a Cantina cast. And I think the Star Wars report was another one I was listening to, the Full of Sith. I was starting to discover some of those and kind of like finding out like, what is the celebration that they're talking about? They kept referring to Star Wars Celebration. I had no idea. So, talking about awakening the fandom again is really to me what it was. And, especially seeing the cards, yeah, it breaks me up a little bit inside, right? My voice is going, but still, it feels like, man, this is starting up again and I'm happy to see it. And my kids are of an age where I'm excited to, take them. And so as this is being announced and starting to get the engines going up, and you start seeing, especially in the Journey 2, because Journey 2 only had a few of the stills from the trailer in the card set, right? It's not until we get really until Series 2, later on, much later on in the discussion where you start seeing scenes from the movie and stuff. But you're just like, oh my gosh, you see the BB-8, and I remember vividly seeing that shot of BB-8 just rolling along, and you're just going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And like I said, the watch party will be starting in here, and I'm going to be firing up the Force Awakens in about 8 minutes. So it's going to be fun to kind of go along with this because really, it feels a lot like we've been talking about. I know I'm going on. We've been talking about like the Phantom Menace, right? The Phantom Menace and its anniversary is over, and the rediscoveries of a lot of this prequel, kind of like, oh yeah, you remember this. And I'm kind of glad that we are getting up to the Force Awakens at 10. I like the logo, like the article that's I just found. Thank you, Mary, for pointing out that Star Wars Insider hit shelves. And starting to see this, and you're seeing some of the cards in the app and things like that. And you're going, yeah, I'm glad it's starting to get its flowers because it just feels like, especially after kind of the lull after Andor, like, man, we need this. We need a love and a revisit to this movie that's been long overdue.
Oh yeah, no, definitely long overdue. And I sat down today and rewatched The Force Awakens again. I got it playing here in the background in the reaction studio, and it was just so much fun to be a part to watch because for me, like y'all, I was when the Disney acquisition was announced, I was stoked. I was excited. They announced the movies and I was excited. And for me, especially growing up overseas, I missed going to all the premieres of, then I was in college for the prequels. So I kind of missed, I wasn't in the fandom at that point. but I had gotten back into it by the time these were announced. And so Force Awakens was the first one I saw opening night. And so to me, this was a huge deal for me. I remember sitting up during Monday Night Football because they were going to show the trailer at halftime and tickets went on sale. And I was sitting there and I was just like, I don't even care for these football teams. Just give me the trailer. It was the high, and if you actually, and I actually remember them showing the statistics for that game, and they had steady statistics through the first half. Then about 2 minutes before halftime, viewership started going up. And during halftime, it was at highest levels they had ever seen on Monday Night Football. And as soon as the trailer aired, it dropped off to almost nothing. It was so funny seeing
There's more of us.
graph. Exactly. I said, there's more of us than there are of them. But it was great. You know, I was very excited for this and I like how you said it, Daz. We all had these ideas in our head where we thought this was going to go, and it made it exciting. I believe a phrase that was used a lot during that time was there's not a better time to be a Star Wars fan, because we were getting so much at that point. We were getting movies. We had Rebels going. We had more movies coming. We were going to get standalone movies. Rogue One was going to be coming. We had all this stuff that was happening. We were getting new books. We were getting all these Road to the Force Awakens books and cards and stuff that were coming in, and which made it very exciting and very to do, very motivating and very hype building, which made it great. And what makes it even better is joining us now is the wonderful Mary Perdue. Mary, how you doing?
Hi guys, sorry I'm late.
No problem. I'm glad you were able to join us. You haven't missed much of the discussion. We are just hanging out here. We were talking about we were talking about Force Awakens, about how when it was first announced, and we start the first trailer about our memories of that and the hype, how we felt and everything. So I'll direct it to you. So how when Force Awakens was first announced, when the casting was announced, and of course when we got that first initial teaser that changed everything for a lot of people, how did that make you feel?
Oh, being an original from from when it was just Star Wars. Great. I mean, we were excited. We hadn't seen anything really since the in the theaters, since the prequels came out. Just the whole announcement in 2012 with Disney buying Lucasfilm and where we thought it was going to go from there. And just excitement to see it back in the theaters. I mean, I think we're all sort of in that same spot again with Mando and Grogu coming up. So, not quite the length of time, but the picture of them all sitting around during that initial group read, table read, and seeing the original ones there, and then just wondering, who are these new people going to be? How's the torch, how's the baton going to be handed off? And, that whole, well, what is it going to be? Kind of like we had with Phantom Menace. What's it going to be like? So.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. And that's pretty much been the consensus from all of us is the excitement and the wonder. And then of course, as we said, we're recording this December 18th on the 10th anniversary of the release. And I remember release night, I was there at the midnight showing with my buddy Robbie, and we went together, saw it at the midnight showing, blew me away. Oh my gosh, that was seeing the Star Wars logo and the scroll on the big screen. It was there was a level of excitement in that I can't even describe. I'm getting chill bumps sitting here thinking about it, because there was just so much emotion at that point. I was scrolling through my Facebook memories, and I saw that when I got home from seeing it, I had posted, all I want to do is talk about The Force Awakens right now. And literally that's all I remember. That's all I wanted to do. To the point that Robbie and I went again that night and watched it again. So I will admit that it was the first movie I saw in theaters multiple times.
Mm.
I saw it maybe 4 or 5 times while it was in theaters, and it was the most I'd ever seen any movie. It's the first one I had seen more than once in a theater. So for me, this was a huge deal. Let's go to opening night. What do y'all remember from opening night of The Force Awakens 10 years ago? Were y'all at opening night? Were y'all, how did y'all see it for the first time? And Mary, you're the newest member of our group here, so I'll let you go first.
Why, thank you. Yes, we definitely saw it opening night. We had on our Her Universe Star Wars shirts, and took a few little pictures in the theater. This was for Chaz. This was as far as the Skywalker saga. This was the first of those films that he saw originally in the theater, right? Because he was a baby when the prequels came out. Well, the first one, he wasn't even born yet. So, but I mean, we wanted to make sure that we were there, that we didn't have anything spoiled, that we, were able to experience with all the other Star Wars fans. Went with friends. So yeah, it was an event. It was definitely an event.
It definitely was. How about for you, Greg?
I was just kind of going back through some of the photo library of December of 2015, and I'm seeing, my son sort of transitioning from junior high to high school, or to, we started doing travel ball. And so I'm seeing we've got a shot of him in both his junior high and what would be his travel, he would eventually play for Wheeling High School. And then we're going to some Hawks games, and I'm seeing how, young my daughter looks. And then, just, kind of going back and seeing, this time of year, and seeing, how everybody looked younger and things like that. But I remember, I think I remember, when the prequel, when the Phantom Menace came out, and you see the opening crawl, right? And you see everything. And that feels like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I'm so excited because we've seen, the movies we had, in one form or another, whether it's VHS or DVD or Blu-ray. But to see The Force Awakens, the crawl coming out, and you're going, oh my gosh. And you don't have any idea what's going to go happen. And it's so exciting. And I just remember, being very emotional about it, and just going, and then, with how this works without the Force Awakens openings, as our the Star Wars Card Trader watch party has begun, and yet I have started the movie, so I'll be watching it and enjoying the conversation and movie in the background. You're just seeing that, that's just really what I take away, because I'm like, you had 2 Christmases, right? Because Rogue One comes a year after this, around the same time, and so I remember being choked up talking about it, and I'm just trying to ask my son, I'm satisfied. It's one of those, I'm just holding it back, because it does bring a lot of emotions, because we've been, whether we've been actively in the fandom or not, we've been a fan of this franchise, ever since, one way or the other, where we were just getting in the books and all this. And so it's just amazing. And you're seeing, they're talking about Luke and all this stuff, and you're like, oh man, this is going to be such a ride. And I think it turns out this was a great ride. What a great ride this movie was.
It really was. It really was a great ride. How about you, Daz? What do you remember from your first viewing? Was it opening night? When did you see it, and what were your reactions at that point?
For me, it wasn't opening night, which at first, like, you're like, oh, that's a bit disappointing. But it was actually the opposite. We went the opening Saturday, like, so, which was like a couple of days past here. And the reason for that was that this was an event, and this was an event that, like, you share with your family kind of event. I remember that my brother traveled over. He came east. I'm not good with my directions, so I'm going to do this. He came east, and my friend and his girlfriend came south, and like there's hundreds of miles being traveled here, and like as it happens, we were like in the middle, so we could have a lie, and it was great. But no, we had friends traveling to see it with us, and so that was the reason that we had it on a Saturday, and I think that really shows how much of like a big deal this was, that like this isn't just any regular old movie. This is a movie that you've been planning with your friends and family for weeks, maybe months, and to the extent that like we had a whole day built around this movie. We went to see the movie. We had a table booked at a pub over here for drinks and food and breakdown discussion. It was a podcast without a podcast, but I just remember, it was that much of a big deal that, like, yes, we could have gone opening night, but it was a case of no, this, a bit like Greg was saying, really, there's an emotion tied in with this that you don't just want to go see this. You want to make this matter. And I remember sort of sitting there and just being completely blown away, feeling completely emotional, not wanting to leave really at the end. I can't say that I'm back then. I was really wanting to wait for all the credits, like, a slap on my wrist really. I see things differently these days. But that movie literally wouldn't let me leave the theater. I waited there right until the end. Much to everybody's annoyance, they had to wait for me before they could go get their first beer. But we spent probably twice as long as the movie talking about it afterwards, and breaking it down. Can you remember this? Could you believe this? What do you think is going to happen with this? What did you think of so and so? And I'd never had the movie experience like that before. And to be honest, I've never had a movie that's quite ever reached that peak. It was just a really big moment that it was a proper cross on my calendar, really, that I'll never forget it. It was fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say too, I was never one to sit through the end through all the credits either. It was never my thing. And Marvel changed that. So hats off to Marvel. They now got everybody sitting through the credits. So for everything now, every movie I go to, I sit there till the credits are done. They turn on the lights and the ushers at the bottom of the stairs going, "Come on, dude, I want to go home."
Yeah,
it's just how it rolls nowadays. It is funny because I've noticed that it's gone from just like me doing that, and now there's like a dozen people hanging in there with me watching all the credits. Is that it? Is that it? Is that it?
Yeah, you don't want to miss anything.
Exactly. So this movie, of course, had a lot of we had a lot of new characters with Kylo Ren, with Rey, with Poe Dameron. There's BB-8, Maz Kanata. There's a lot of Finn. There's a lot of new characters that came in from this movie that carried the sequels, and of course we had a lot of the original cast too. But with this new cast that came out, and I already know Daz's answer to this question. Who did you connect with the most? Yep, he just stood up, showed me his shirt.
No surprise.
No surprise there. Which one of these characters that from these new characters that came out did you connect with or intrigued you the most when you saw this movie when you were done? Greg, how about you first, brother?
Is interesting is, like when you're talking about like new characters introduced and you're like Laura Santeca and you're just like, all of a sudden it's like, to me, she's royalty. And you're like, what? And you don't really know who. And then you see, and oh man, it's really tough. I mean, Poe, kind of naturally, it's kind of easy to kind of, because here's the hero, look to be like the hero of the piece, and he's trying to make it off, and so I think you kind of connect with, but between Finn and Rey, I mean, I think they're all three so really well balanced and well written. And Kylo Ren makes his first appearance on here, and you're just like, what's going on with that? And yeah, wow. But yeah, I would say it's kind of easy. Like Poe made it kind of easy to get your way in, but then you kind of see, with Finn and then with Rey, everyone just I think you felt like an immediate connection to them. That's what I kind of like. I think that they were done well. I mean, in a movie that had to service so many characters, I think they were made instantly like, okay, I can get on. I think in retrospect, I think maybe Kylo was a little hard to kind of get at the beginning because we don't really understand his motivations yet. But I think with the other three, it's pretty clear, because Poe's trying to get something for General Leia. Rey is just trying to survive, and Finn is just trying to escape. And you're just like, it's kind of interesting. But yeah, and of course BB-8. Can I say more? Amy Mulder, a big BB-8 fan. But yeah, it's kind of funny to going back and just wow, this is fun.
Yeah, it really is. It really is because all these characters were phenomenally acted, phenomenally written. How about you, Mary? Since we know what Daz's is, we'll let him. We'll save him for last. Well, how about you, Mary? What was your favorite?
I think Poe was probably my favorite. I think he just had that little bit of that Han Solo to him. That he brought that charm and that charisma, and but yet he was there for everybody and was willing to help, and you could feel a connection with him and Finn fairly quickly. But just like both of you have said, all three of those new main characters were very good, well written. Rey was not a substitute for Leia, not a substitute for Padme, but in addition to having another strong lead female. And so that was wonderful that we had that as well. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to choose. It's kind of like back in 1977 when people said, who's your favorite, Luke or Han, right? Yeah. And at one point Han would be, and another point Luke would be, and then you're like, okay, but here's Leia, who really ran the show and saved all their butts. So I mean, it's the same kind of dynamic, I think, between the three sequel ones and our three original ones.
You're exactly right, because this movie was such a great mirror to that 77 initial release, because it gave a lot of that same feel. And it is hard to pick. I'm not gonna lie. I sit here and I look at them, the mystery of Kylo Ren, the grace of Rey, just the bravery of Finn, and just Poe in and of himself was incredible. But when I walk away from it, I mean, when I walked away from it back then, I was sitting there going, I want to see what they're going to do with Finn, because Finn was the most was hugely intriguing, with the former stormtroopers now fighting against them. He's what the history is there. And I was really, especially when you find out that when Hux is talking about how they were trained since birth. So, he's known nothing else. So to me, that's what intrigued me so much about Finn. And I loved him in this movie, and he walked away very close. I mean, it's close on all of them, but he just kind of edged everybody else with that historical background there. And of course, we know Daz, so we can move it. No, just kidding. Daz, what's your favorite character from the new of these new characters? And go ahead and surprise us all.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to Rey Talk. No. No.
I'm gonna make it a
Aaron,
spin-off of
honestly,
reactions.
Reactions.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Reactions.
Somebody
Oh my
trademark that.
gosh.
That's a good one.
Someone
Somebody
put
trademark
down a
that.
t-shirt. Put down a t-shirt, Greg. Thank you.
Star Wars reactions.
No, I mean, I think honestly, before the main piece, I will say I think you make some great points about Finn. I've been watching Force Awakens a couple times this week, and it really struck me. Like every time you watch a movie like this, you probably pick up something slightly different. You take something different home. But for me, my hot take right now is that Finn is the MVP of the Force Awakens. I think that. And that's coming from somebody who's about to talk at length about Rey, but John Boyega really brought it to that movie. Like he has the full range, the full spectrum of emotions and parts to play in that. He's extremely funny in it. Like there's not many movies I can watch 10,000 times like I have The Force Awakens and still laugh at the jokes and the sort of little expressions. But it's still to this day. I said to my wife, I was just like, I just never stopped laughing at this movie. I realized that it's pretty much exclusively the Finn parts on that. He really did like an amazing job on that. Like it's in some ways I think he had the most difficult role to play in that he had the most dimensions possibly in the first movie. Yeah, but anyway, I'm eating into my Ray time, so I'm going to talk about Ray now. Ray, Ray for me, my favorite character. When opening the movie, a very solitary character. She doesn't speak for a lot of minutes, movie time wise. We see her just, exploring, salvaging, living alone, a really solitary life, literally marking days since. At that point, we're not really clear on what it is. It transpires to be days since like her parents left her. But I was completely enthralled by just watching her go about her day-to-day business in this galaxy that we love so much. It was perfect. I could just live in that space. I've spoken to Greg about this before. This is probably my favorite part of Star Wars. Those early scenes in the Force Awakens, because I feel a sense of peace when I watch it, and I see that the strength of her character is that despite being alone, she's not broken by it. She hasn't lost hope, where really like nobody could blame her for losing it. And she seems to manage, when you see like that she's exchanging parts that she salvaged for 1/4 portion, which was a day's worth of food. But it's a pretty miserable life. Yet at the end of it, I love the fact that she's a dreamer. She sits outside her AT-AT, her AT-AT for those inclined, and she puts on an X-wing pilot helmet, and she just watches ships and dreams of what could be. And I'm like, wow, like talk about an inspirational character. And from there, she just, I don't know. I feel like Rey's an ever developing, improving character. We reached this point where she's sat down and sort of, to an extent, she's reached a level of contentment. You can see this is probably her daily routine. And before she knows it, she's saving this droid from like another salvager and a lugger beast. She doesn't know anything about this droid, but she sees this droid as an individual, and she doesn't think that it's a possession. And straight away, I'm like, okay, I can really get on board with this person's ethics and morals, and I like that she's through a lot of Force Awakens. Really, she's wide-eyed and a little bit of in wonder and awe, but she never lets that really stop her. She yes, at Maz's castle, she does run away when, rightfully so. After you've seen a terrible Force vision, I'm not going to hold that against her. But generally, she runs towards danger rather than away from it, and that's in spite of her living this like strange, quiet, solitary life in which you could expect her to just sort of shrink away from it. And I can relate to that. I'm an extremely shy person, but I've sort of I can in some ways match choices I've made in my life, and some that have been inspired by the character, honestly, where I've gone, hey, I'm super nervous and shy about this, but I've got this opportunity. I'm going to take it. I'm not going to miss out on something just because it might be uncomfortable at the onset. And, this was Ray to me in the first film. And of course, a character goes on a whole journey from here. But if we're talking about Force Awakens, this is like why I fell in love with her as a character and hold her in such esteem.
Very good. Very good. I love that. And I was sitting here and I was listening to you talk about Ray, and I'm sitting there thinking, I got to get with David, and 2026, we need to bring back our profile series. And we need to do Ray now after that. So that might be, have to put that on a calendar for 26.
I'll do you one better, Aaron, as I'm watching this, and Daz is watching this, and I'm watching this because I'm like, I want Daz's full commentary on this movie. I want to like turn over in the special features, and there's because we never really got the director commentary for this. I'm like, I want Daz's commentary for the whole one because I think it's just really spot on when you're talking about all the range. And yeah, you're right. It didn't dawn it. She hasn't really said anything yet up until when she rescues BB-8. Yeah. And it's all done, and you can see, but there's that hopefulness. And then later on, I kept thinking of like all these great lines she's going to say later, and but it's just very believable. And like I said, you've got to work to kind of get into some of the other characters, and we haven't even kind of talked about some of the villains yet, which are going to take us on a range of things, ones we like and ones we're like, meh. But here it's just amazing. Within these first scenes, we've seen so much from both Poe and then Finn and then Rey, that such a great introduction to this movie.
It was a great introduction movie and a great introduction to these new characters. And even with the villains, like you brought up with Kylo Ren, we get our first glimpses of Snoke, Supreme Leader Snoke. Then of course, General Hux, in all his glory. And we see the evilness of these creatures. And what I liked so much about how they portrayed Kylo is he was still having that fight in this movie. Yeah. I think about the scene where he's sitting there doing this monologue, and it ends up being before Vader's charred helmet. And he's like, I could still feel the pull to the light, and help me, grandfather. Snoke feels it. I know he can. Help me finish what you started. And you hear that fight and that struggle in his story, in his voice. And it's just, it made that character so much more complicated in this movie. And then ultimately leading to his final twist and turn right at the end, when he, to me, which the most shocking part of the movie, when he kills Han Solo, when he kills his father. I remember sitting in the theater, and when that lightsaber ignited, my mouth hit the ground, and I kind of fell back in my seat going, I did not just see this. This did not just happen. I was so excited.
Fast forward through that now.
Oh, I tell you, that one, there are just a couple scenes in Star Wars that really just give me a good old punch in the gut. And it's Kanan dying in Rebels, and it's Solo here when he passes away. Then of course when he makes his Force Ghost return in Rise of Skywalker, to me that was a good gut punch too, as the healing begins. But these villains were fantastic. What were y'all's thoughts on our baddies in this film, as it came down? And I'm interested to hear you, Mary, because you said you're an original. So how did it compare to to how you felt about the originals.
I'm not real sure you can truly compare Kylo Ren with Darth Vader. I don't think that, even though, okay, how do I say this? I like that, like Daz. I sat and rewatched. I rewatched it today. It had been a while since I actually had sat down and watched The Force Awakens. It's actually been a while since I've rewatched any of the sequels. The Force Awakens, I saw more than any of them. I saw it multiple times in the theater when it first came out, and then we did the Star Wars Day at Sea on Disney Cruise Line in 2016, and they played all of the movies in the big theater, but they especially played that because it had just came out, right? I mean, 1 through 7 they were playing, and I think Chaz counted. I probably saw it maybe 24 times, right? So
Wow.
I saw it a lot,
but
I really don't think that Kylo Ren ever truly matched the way we felt about him as the same way we felt about Darth Vader. I think it's just really hard to get that same kind of, I don't know, feeling about him as a villain as we did. I think Darth Vader was just so unique at the time that it's just really hard to compare that. I mean, he's definitely a villain. We all wondered how there was going to be a redemption. And while I watched it today, sitting there, and you continually hear people say, well, all the Star Wars movies, all the Star Wars except for Andor, are made for 12-year-olds, right? I mean, that's what George has said from the beginning. But the first 10 minutes of that movie is extremely violent. I mean, he's telling them to kill every single villager. And I literally sat there thinking, he's a little bit more ruthless in hindsight after going back 10 years later and kind of watching it again. And maybe it's just sort of where we've gotten, with all the other Star Wars and everything else that goes on in the world. But I literally sat there and thought to myself, wow, this is made for 12-year-olds in this whole village. He just told them to kill this whole village. So, he's pretty ruthless. And I don't know that we really ever saw Darth Vader as in the 3 movies original as being quite that ruthless. So it's different. I have conflicting feelings about it. And then when we get to Hux, I wish they would have done him a little differently. As far as he's just so out there, right? I wish they would have calmed him down a little bit. But boy, he's just 100% all the way. With whatever he decides he's going to do, he's gung ho, right? So you have that manic rage, I think, that both of these 2 characters have in such different ways. And then, Snoke just back there stoking the fires constantly between the 2. So it's almost like another little, you've got Poe and Rey and Finn on one side trying to do what the good things that they're trying to do. So their little trilogy thing. And then you have Snoke leading these other 2 characters and stoking their fires. So it's very distinct between these 6 people, these 6 characters of what's going on with this movie and how it's progressing and taking us along for that crazy ride.
Well said. Yeah, there's a little bit of that yin and yang going on in there with each of those 3, those 2 sets of 3. Daz, how about you, brother? How was your thoughts? I know you're passionate about Rey. What were your thoughts on our baddies in there?
Well, it's fascinating, really, to hear Mary talk about Kylo, in the fact that she talks about the fact that you can't help but measure him up against Darth Vader. And it's interesting because I think us as a viewer never really feel that he's anywhere on par or in the vicinity of being anything like Darth Vader. But then from a character point of view, I think that is Kylo's big problem. Is I think he also knows that he isn't Darth Vader. He tries everything he can. He tries mass destruction, cruelty, and he just isn't Darth Vader. And it's because he doesn't know Anakin Skywalker at all. He has this mask and this sort of grotesque visualization of who that was, and you can maybe a push say you almost when he's talking to the Vader mask, you kind of pity him in a way because he's kind of asking the Vader mask to telling him that that he's struggling and that he wants to finish what he started and all this, and as viewers we're watching him going, oh, your real big problem here is that you don't know Anakin at all because you've come from a completely different place, and you can never reach that point where you are him, and that's I guess the whole or one of the big themes of Force Awakens really is identity. We were talking about the fact that that Rey doesn't talk for a long time, but the other thing to note when you're watching the Force Awakens now is that it's a long time before you see Rey, Finn, or Kylo's face, and especially Kylo, like Ben Solo, you don't see his face until I think the interrogation scene with Rey, which is a long way into the movie, and so this is like pure theatre of like an emotional mask for each character, which sort of I think was always a good way of leading in this theme of like these three people are struggling with their identity. Rey is like she's like alone and waiting for family she doesn't know if they'll arrive. Finn is completely turning around who he's supposed to be, and then we've got Kylo, who has this whole idea of like who he should be and measuring against like so little information. From other material, we now know that a lot of this was coming from Snoke. Let's be honest. Let's fast forward. This wasn't really coming from Snoke. This was coming from Palpatine. But he was being fed this like misinformation, and he's quite a sad character to watch in Force Awakens because you think everything that you're like putting your hat on here is completely untrue and doesn't exist. And I think that like in a completely different way makes him quite a compelling villain. Just to mention Hux quickly, I think that Hux is most sinister in this movie. He is, like Mary said, he's quite pantomime, but he's very of our time right now. When I watched it recently, I was thinking, wow, how interesting to watch this like propaganda merchant that he is. And he fully believes what he's saying, and that's why he can say it the powerful way that he can. But in some ways his character has become more relevant to our times now, perhaps just because as with all Star Wars, we can always like draw connections between like what we see in the wide world to what we see on the screen there. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting role, which is completely removed from Kylo. And in that way, I think that they did a good job of that. They've got these two baddies who are completely different and at odds with each other through the movie, which is quite good fun. Really looking back at it, where they're dueling with their words. Just quickly, one last thing to mention. Aaron, you said about Han being killed by Kylo. I remember that moment. The air going out of the theater. I've never had that feeling in a movie before, where like you have the pit of your stomach is just heavy. And to be honest, the first time I watched Force Awakens, really the movie kind of ended at that point, because although I watched the rest of the movie, I never really managed to engage with the movie after that event. And it's not because what was happening on the screen wasn't compelling or interesting or well done. It was that like this is emotions from decades. This felt like a friend, a family member, like it wow, like they did a good job of a terrible thing.
That they truly did. They truly did. You know, and then Hans, the movie was very much there was a Han centric focus in this movie compared to some of the other returning characters. We saw a lot of his involvement with Ray and with Finn, and then of course the mission on Starkiller Base and everything. So he was such a vital part of the movie, and then just have that swept out from under us. It was a hard thing to swallow. Um, and Greg, we still got to get to you and your thoughts on the villains. But we'll I'll go ahead and let you address that first before we move into the Han Solo bit.
I just think it's really shocking we never got to see Constable Zuvio.
Oh,
You know,
the ultimate peg warmer.
I'm telling you, it's a tragedy. It's funny, thinking back what Mary was saying about, Kylo, and in some cases, Darth Vader was just this sort of lightning in a bottle. And I think had we not seen Snoke at all in Force Awakens, which I think takes a little bit away because you're still trying to figure out, I don't think I've ever really gotten too much on board with Snoke. I like the tie-ins, and I like, them trying to tie that in. Unkar Plutt here is making a stronger case to me than Snoke. But yeah, and also just thinking of, Hux getting, now as much as I enjoy Hux in The Last Jedi, the character kind of goes this back and forth, and by Rise of Skywalker, he kind of gets done a little dirty. So it would have been interesting to take that. I think he has a very strong intro, and especially when he has that large speech in front of all the factions of the First Order. Then you start to go like, this man is dangerous, and I like what they're kind of doing. I don't think they can, they kind of did a 180, and obviously, we don't have to go over what happens as far as in the writing of this, but I think it was a very strong opening for him. Like I said, Kylo, it's hard, it's hard to follow Darth Vader. I don't know how you follow that because no one was expecting Darth Vader when we first, what we got. Although I think that, like I said, I think if you had, there's a lot going on in this movie, and I think maybe if they dialed a little bit back of Snoke, or made it Snoke gets more lines I think than Luke in this, and I think we could a little more Luke, a little less Snoke, but just to kind of get everybody in. But this movie has to do so much. One thing I'm really liking as we're kind of going back over this is how much action is in this first part of the film, and what are we at right now? Like right now we're about a half hour in, and they're escaping on the Falcon Jakku. And you're just like, we haven't even seen one of the big payoffs that we know is coming in the trailer with, Chewie, we're home. And all of a sudden, everybody is just starting to cry at that point. But, we do have some introductions to hear. And I think even with Captain Phasma, who we haven't even mentioned yet, which is amazing. Yep. Yet another character that unfortunately gets a little, kind of gets a little short shifted in this, but there's so much going on that at the end of the day, could they have trimmed some of this down or kind of paced it? It's hard to introduce so many new characters, get them fleshed out, and then work back in. I can see the logic of only really focusing on like a Han Solo and Chewie with this, because otherwise there's just so much going on. And I do think that like the Leia reunion is a nice payoff after we get, through with Maz's canteen and all that. And the whole time I'm going like, and how did Poe get back? And I'm like, I'm starting to think, I'm like, man, I need to, I need to watch this a little more times. I'm way down on my DAS count. There's like, back in the 80s when you had, Pete Rose going for all those hits, and you had Buddy Biancalana, David Letterman used to make fun of this. And it's like, here's Daz's Force Awaken watch count, and then like Greg's. And it's like, sadly, there is way too few on my part. I got a little catching up to do there. But yeah, I think that, Kylo ends up, I think, getting the better of all this if you go through the first three movies. I think by the end you start to kind of see it, and I do like, towards the end of the movie, when you get into the confrontation between Rey and Kylo, in the forest with the lightsabers, and you start seeing like it starts to kind of pay off. Like, okay, I think I'm on board, but I think it takes a little longer for Kylo to kind of get his legs under him, as opposed to like Hux. And when you get that very strong introduction, clearly we know where this guy's going. There's no like he needs no mask. We've got this down pat. Phasma, little interesting. She gets a book, and a comic, but
Yep.
there's so much going on here. Some of these characters I don't think get fleshed out as much. And then, we didn't see the Emperor until into Empire Strikes Back. And I think that was kind of well done. I mean, obviously, Tarkin does some heavy lifting there, and you can kind of see a little bit of the parallel with Hux. But maybe we could have done a little less Snoke in this one, leaving that mystery for the next movie, and getting a little more of like, just Hux and Kylo, and that them back and forth.
Very good. Very good. Very good. You brought up that speech, which was you saw bits of it in the trailer and
Chilling.
stuff. It was just such an intense speech, an intense moment, an intense scene, and with the TIE fighters and the thousands of troops standing before him, and he's just yelling, and the intensity, he's turning red as he's yelling. It was such an intense scene. And I can't help but mirror that over, because they tied the Resistance show into this, and he's giving that speech in the animated form in animation in that into season 1. And
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. And just the emotional impact, you see what's going on there, but then to see how it's being broadcast to First Order troops and people around the galaxy, and the First Order troops are watching it, and they just start hooting and hollering and celebrating in that scene. They're not there, but they're still pumped up and fired up about it. And then of course Hosnian Prime gets destroyed, and it really brings in the evilness and the seriousness of an issue that this First Order truly is. Well, hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for part 1 of our look back at The Force Awakens. We had such a long episode and such a great discussion. I've had to split it into 2 episodes, so be on the lookout for the next one next week. But wanted just to take a quick moment to close out this episode of part 1. We appreciate Greg and Daz and Mary being with us. If you do want to ask any questions or share your thoughts or opinions on Force Awakens, you can hit us up on any of our social media accounts. We are on Facebook and Twitter X, as David calls it, at SW Reactions Pod. We are also on Tumblr and TikTok and Blue Sky and Threads and Instagram and YouTube, all at SW Reactions. Pinterest, we're on Pinterest as well. I'll forget stuff when David's not here. We also have an email address, swreactions@gmail.com. And of course, as always, you can leave us a voicemail at speakpipe.com/Star Wars Reactions. Of course, we do have all the links for our guests, for Greg and the Rebel Base Card podcast, for Daz and Mary, in our show notes. So make sure you check out our notes and get those links. And of course, we hope you will join us for part 2. But for now, like with any episode of Star Wars Reactions, I have to end it the only way I know how, which of course is with that's right, Star Wars Dad Joke of the Week. Here we go. Since we're talking about The Force Awakens, it's only natural that we do a BB-8 joke. So, what did R2-D2 say when he met BB-8? He said, "I like the way you roll." The way you roll. There we go. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We hope you are doing well. Have a wonderful holiday.
And we love y'all. We appreciate y'all as you celebrate the holiday, however you do. We hope you do remember to do something kind, not just for yourself or your family, but do it for some stranger, for somebody else, because you'll never know how much one act of kindness will affect them and you in this holiday season. Remember, this is your place for elegant discussion for a more civilized age.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or by Lucasfilm Limited. It's intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars. All names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and the respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Star Wars Reactions unless otherwise indicated. Star Wars Reactions. Elegant discussion for a more civilized age.